This is Talk Toomey. Your host, Joshua Toomey, bring you epic rants, anecdotes, and interviews with heavy hitters from hardcore
A new life begins!
to hair metal. This is Talk Toomey.
All right, guys, let's welcome to the line Lou Brutus, new book coming out, Sonic Warrior, out April 14th. Lou, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing really good. It's sort of weird releasing a memoir in the first place, but then releasing it under the circumstances we find ourselves under. It's extra weird. But if having a book tour postponed is the worst thing I have to deal with through all of this shit, then I will consider myself a very lucky man.
Well, and then it gives you, like what we were talking about a little bit before we started recording, it kind of gives you, has to have you think outside the box a little bit and what you're doing, with your reading a chapter on Facebook Live and, doing stuff like that and kind of getting it out there in a different way.
Yeah, I had planned on doing stuff like that anyway, but I was going to wait a little bit longer on some of it, but everybody's at home, including myself. I'm lucky enough that I can do all of my various radio endeavors from home. I've been set up to work from home for years. Now certainly I work in some world-class facilities, but there's been a need to be able to do everything on the fly as well the last 5 to 7 years. So I think I was probably in a lot better shape than a lot of other people, be they in media or anywhere else, in terms of, hey, you need to work from home starting tomorrow. And I'm like, okay, and was able to run with it. But back to your original point, yeah, I was looking at every possible avenue I could to sort of present the book and the ideas behind it to people, and this had been one, so I'm just taking advantage of it however I can. A, it's good to get the word out on the book. B, I'm fucking cooped up like everybody else, so I need something to do.
Yeah, and that's one thing with the all the bands out now, right, that are trying to get albums out, and they're having to resort to different things that they may not even be thinking about doing. And, even with Code Orange recently doing the live show, even Metallica now is doing Metallica Mondays, where they're showing a live show every Monday night. There's a lot of people like really adapting to the situation that we're in now.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be interesting to watch, both in the music industry and non, what different sorts of things are more widely understood and used, or what are accepted from out of this crisis. And I have every belief that, we're going to come out of this on the other side. This is not an apocalypse or anything like that. That's, it's certainly extremely serious and needs to be dealt with, and the sooner the better. But if you look through history, when there have been vast upheavals like the influenza of 1918 or other unpleasant things in history, often interesting and very helpful things come out of those. So, let us hope we quickly get to the part where we get good things come out of it, and that it's not too much of a catastrophe for everybody in the U.S. and around the world.
I did see that Spotify put out a thing about the streaming numbers are actually down right now, and I attribute that to a lot of people maybe driving in, listening to it in their car, listening to it at work. Not so many people listening at home, with the kids around and things like that. It's not a fun time to listen to Slipknot and Megadeth when the toddlers are running through the house.
Yeah, and it's going to take a while for once the dust settles on all of this, to figure out, okay, what exactly did people do and how did they react, and what was good about that, what was bad about that, and we'll see where it goes. So I'm just keeping my fingers crossed. The books arrive on time for everybody. I had a really awesome guy from FedEx just yesterday, as of this taping, come to my house and pick up 26 cases of autographed books. this was to have been, I think, like a really joyous event for me, but under the circumstances, it's just surreal. It's like, this is the worst fucking episode of Black Mirror I've ever been a part of, and you feel like for a few scant moments, I felt like the lead in it. And I'm like, when did the director tell me, okay, you're releasing a book and there's a pandemic and you're going to be autographing copies in the middle of it and trying to get FedEx to come and deliver it across to your publisher in Los Angeles so they can get them out to the pre-order people. It's just so bizarre. But again, I consider myself lucky in the aspect that I have the book coming out, and it gives me some little extra tasks to do while I'm at home, which is a hell of a lot more fun than just endlessly scrolling or through the news or watching the news and getting super depressed about everything. And, with everybody cooped up and unable to get together in groups, if you can't go see concerts, then by God, you may as well read about concerts. And, essentially every chapter of the book is, as you know, because you've been able to go through it already, each chapter of the book is built around a concert or music stuff from my career. And these just tend to be some of the crazier stories, crazier things that have happened to me through the years, and that I had told verbally to friends so often that I thought, well, when I finally get around to writing a book, I'll have to include this story or that story. The book is really only about half the length that I thought it would be, and it's close to 300 pages. But that just leaves me room for hopefully another book if everything goes well with this one, and I stay in one piece and hopefully get around to it. I can only think that perhaps the opening chapter of a second book would be the time I released a crazy ass rock and roll memoir in the middle of a fucking pandemic. Or maybe that's just the preface of the next one. We'll see. But I knew going in the book would be a fun read. That's basically the feedback that I get from everybody, and that's what I was going for. And the illustrations with it, for those who don't know, Alan McBain, who has been a graphics artist and a friend of mine for decades, has done an original black and white illustration for each chapter, and they're very Mad Magazine-esque and perfectly encapsulate the madness of each chapter. Anyway, I knew it would be like a sort of a light fun read in what under normal circumstances people would call a summer read. I think the world needed something like that before all of this shit hit the fan, because everybody between the politics and society in general was at one another's throats. I thought, well, here's a book that maybe everybody can, put their troubles aside for a little while as they breeze through the chapters. And the chapters all tend to be pretty short. I get in, I get out, and they're, all pretty lighthearted and crazed. So hopefully as they get into folks' hands, it will give them a bit of a break from all of the horrible news that's overtaken so many of us.
Yeah, it definitely went from summer read to quarantine read, so...
Yeah, basically, but again, if there's anything that can get your mind off of it, if only for a little while. I'm not saying people should stick their head in the sands. That's bad, but so is obsessing about everything 24/7. I think anybody and everybody, whether we're under the conditions we are now or just normal everyday horse shit that everybody goes through, you need a break from things, and. I'm hoping this is the type of book that can do it for people. And if you don't mind, I'll rattle off just some of the chapter titles that'll give you an idea of the,
Yeah, the chapter titles are great. So yeah, hit us with a few.
Yeah, the first chapter, and this is the sort of the setup bio chapter, as it deals with my teenage self going out into the music world for the first time. The chapter is entitled "The Time I Attended My First Concert and Threw Up on Carlos Sanchez." And it's about going to see Black Sabbath and Ted Nugent, December of '76 at Madison Square Garden. I went with my older sister and her boyfriend, Carlos. I should not have gone. I was really sick with the flu, but I didn't want to miss my first concert. And I got there and I was so hyped up and excited about being there that I thought, well, I know what to do. And I downed an entire bottle of Boone's Farm strawberry wine in one throw, which led me to pass out, miss Black Sabbath, wake up, and then start power vomiting over anybody and anything in Madison Square Garden. And so there's the opening salvo of the book. Most everything else deals with things that happened during the course of my, radio, music, media career. There's chapters like the time Motley Crue's roadie showed me the grossest thing in the history of Western civilization, the time Dr. Hunter S. Thompson menaced me with depraved violence and a bottle of Chivas Regal, the time our tour bus ran over a guy on the New Jersey Turnpike. He turned out to be okay, or else I wouldn't have put it in the book. I'm trying to think of a couple other chapters. The time that Robert Plant charmed the shit out of my date because he's a rotten, limey bastard. Excuse me. And the closing chapter, because the chapters don't happen in any order. It's like if we were hanging out in the bar and I just started telling stories. The final chapter is entitled The Time I Rained Vomit Down Upon the Biggest Concert in History. And that's about working Live Aid. And I think, I don't even think I was 20 years old yet. Maybe I just hit 20. And I was working for WMMR, the big King Hill rock radio station in Philadelphia, and got to do two flyovers in a helicopter over Live Aid that morning. It was during the first one that I tossed my cookies all over the glass nose of the helicopter, which made the pilot very upset. Apparently, helicopter pilots don't like it when you vomit all over the inside of their helicopters. So then I had to stick my mouth out this tiny little sliding side window in the glass canopy on the side. Oh. And I literally rained vomit down on the biggest music event in history. So that gives you an idea of the stupidity involved in the book. But as you said earlier, I think it sort of can help give people an idea what the concert industry is like, what the music industry is actually like. It's, it's a pretty honest look at how things work, as ridiculous as it can be. It's certainly not glamorous, hardly at all. I mean, you know that from your years. Mm-hmm. It's not fun. It's not glamorous, but it's still something kind of cool to be a part of. One other thing I wanted to say about the book is, it's not I saw so-and-so cheating on his wife with a needle sticking out of his arm. And I could have probably written a book like that, but I'm not an asshole.
Right.
At least not for that. I'm sure there are probably plenty of people listening to this right now go, oh no, he's an asshole. Oh no. But at least I'm not an asshole for that. I've been around this for so long. I've been around this stuff since I'm a kid, 40 plus years around this nonsense. So I've certainly seen enough that I could string together more than enough for a couple of books that are sort of fun and stupid and goofy and insightful, as opposed to just shitting on other people. I just don't go in for that, I just don't want to be that kind of person or write that kind of book. I'd probably sell more copies, but again, I'd be a dick. Again, I'll probably be considered a dick by some other people, maybe, but at least not for that. So at least I can look at myself in the mirror for that.
Well, judging from the first chapter to the last chapter with all the vomit and everything, maybe it's a good thing that you are quarantined into your house, because obviously you would spread COVID-19 to everyone you came into contact with.
Oh, don't even say that. Don't even say that. Yeah, I mean, we're self-isolated. We're not quarantined.
You know what I mean?
Sick.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Knock on wood anyway. I just, hopefully my vomiting days are long gone. I mean, I gave up, hitting it heavy years ago. My only real drug now that I deal with is caffeine. I'm a firm believer in, getting up early and getting shit done. And if I need to get wired on anything, I'll get wired on black coffee and
Nice.
extremely loud music, and my tastes in music run to all sorts of things, but certainly to the loud and heavy more often than anything else. And again, there are so many stories about so many groups in here and so many strange adventures I've had. I just hope it gives everybody a break from all this shit that we're going through.
Well, the one thing I liked about it was, you talk about it, it's not in any kind of chronological order. You can kind of pick this book up wherever you are and just read a chapter and just to kind of get your mind off of something. But the other thing that's nice about it too was the fact that it's not just like, it's not a heavy metal book. It's, there's Snoop Dogg and Dave Grohl and Starset and, like you said, Robert Plant and the Aquabats. I mean, there's so many artists through there that you're not just gonna, you're not just this is not a death metal book. You know what I'm saying? This is just a good music book written by someone that has been there and done that kind of stuff.
Well, I appreciate you saying that, and it makes me feel better about the choices of the chapters because, I got turned down by some publishers initially because they said, well, you should only have hard and heavy bands in there. And I'm like, well, I got great stories about some of the biggest names in music. I mean, one of the other chapters that I sort of penciled out but did not put in is about Frank Sinatra.
Oh, wow.
Whom I did not meet. I saw him 3 times, 2 of which were invitation-only shows, one of which I was backstage at. And, we got cleared out by his guys. They're wearing tuxedos, but they got fucking Uzis. These guys just don't mess around. And that probably would have been a short chapter. But when I was pressured to, only do it on heavy metal or only do it on hard rock heavy metal bands, I was like, I already got a lot of this written and I kind of like it. So if you guys don't want to put it out, I totally get it. But, I get knocked on sometimes from folks because it's that purity thing.
Mm-hmm.
You get, and listen, whatever anybody likes, it's up to them. And I'm not knocking anybody's tastes or choices or what they like or don't like. But often, I shouldn't say often, but too often, if you're around a particular genre, if somebody thinks that you deal or like other genres, that you're not worthy of being around. It's this fucking purity test. You're not pure. And, with all due respect, people like that can go fuck themselves. If they want to keep a narrow focus in what they listen to and support, I'm all for that. They can like or dislike whatever they want, but I don't think that they should, butt their noses into somebody else's business or life or career and tell them that they are not worthy of being around something because they don't pass some bullshit purity test. And, I'm not a political animal whatsoever. But it's the same sort of shit that's caused everybody to be at each other's throats in politics too. It's you're not pure, or you're not 1,000% this, so fuck you. When people ask, are you a metal guy? Are you a this guy or that guy? I'm a music fan. Often I when people ask me what I do for a living, because I have my, I'm lucky enough to be involved in a lot of different interesting things. I just say I'm a professional music fan. I'm a music fan. I was always a music fan since I'm 4 or 5 years old. The preface of the book goes into the fact that, I was 6 or 7 and I knew I wanted to be on the radio and be around music. I'm just a music person and I like all sorts of music. And I don't think anybody should limit themselves into what they listen to. So yeah, most radio listeners know me because I helped break, or I shouldn't say, I don't want to say it like that, but was the first to get there and promote and play bands like Slipknot, Stone Sour, Korn, Avenged Sevenfold, Hailstorm, and all of these others. But that doesn't mean that's all I want to listen to. I think Lady Gaga is incredibly talented and a phenomenal entertainer. One of my go-to artists that I listen to when I just need to chill the fuck out is they were the biggest vocal group of the late 30s and early 40s. They were called the Ink Spots.
Okay.
And they were not rock and roll by any stretch of the imagination, but they were one of the forerunners of rock. Their big hits were super, super mellow ballads. But then when you start to go into some of the other stuff that they did, it was what we would consider roots music now, or stuff that predated the blues. And these were the stepping stones that rock was later built on. This is like a full 2 generations of music before rock. And it's all part of the story, and it's all part of music. So, I can listen to Slipknot or Slayer 1 minute, and then I can go listen to, I don't know, the Struts or Cheap Trick the next, and then I can go listen to, again, the Ink Spots or somebody else, and I'm perfectly content. And if that makes me, if that deems me lesser in the eyes of some people because I don't pass their purity test, fuck them. I'm not going to lose any sleep. So
you must have been listening to my other podcast recently where I'm the new metal guy because I was in a new metal band, and I went on to, and I've never once, not been a fan of Limp Bizkit or any of that era bands. And I made an off comment that I didn't even remember saying, that I just never got into Judas Priest. And you would have thought I just pissed on, Ozzy's grave or something, not that he's dead,
yeah.
but you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And it just like, and our Facebook group just blew up, and I was like, I don't even really remember saying that. So I went back and listened, and I was like, yeah, just because my other co-host is a big fan. He was saying something about it, and I was like, yeah, I just never listened to him, just whatever. They just didn't. And it, you thought I just could have killed somebody.
Yeah. I get it when, people say, like, I'm trying to think of a good example, so I'm not hanging you out to dry on your own.
No, you're fine.
But there are sometimes, people will say, well, I love this artist or that artist, and they're, incredibly huge and popular. And I'm like, I might not be a huge fan of theirs. And the way I put it is, listen, I realize that they have tons of talent.
Mm-hmm.
Their music just doesn't speak to me the way that other things that I like speaks to me. And I think that's what it's all about. The one word that sort of irks me when people discuss things that they don't like, and it gets thrown around all the time, talentless. Yeah. Oh, they're talentless. Oh, right. Fuck Lady Gaga, she's talentless. I'm like, man, you're a fucking imbecile if you think she's talentless. If you don't like it, okay, I respect that. Not everybody's going to like everything. But don't throw the talentless word around at somebody who's obviously incredibly talented just because you don't like them.
Right.
That's some real bullshit. And that's the mark of somebody who doesn't, respect differing opinions or respect differing genres. I've had a chip on my shoulder for a number of years because rock artists get fucked over by NARAS and by the Grammy Awards. And I'm a fucking member. I'm a voter.
Oh, wow.
And I'm humiliated by it. The way that rock is frozen out. Listen, I think the time has passed. I wish some artists, some management who represent rock people would sue the fucking Grammy Awards. Because you know what? The organization that controls the Grammys should be representing all of their dues-paying members fairly. And they're not. They're fucking them over. They're fucking over rock. They're fucking over jazz. They're fucking over classical. They're fucking over everything that basically isn't pop music. They cut them off from the awards, which cuts them off from hundreds of millions of eyes around the world. And it's doing damage to these genres. It's doing damage to these careers. And you know what? All of these, again, dues-paying members have every right to expect to be treated fairly on an even keel with any other genre. There was a day when you would turn on the Grammy Awards and you would see a classical artist, okay, maybe only one in 4 hours, but you'd at least see a representation of the genre. All the genres would get a little time to shine, and maybe the more popular genres or artists would get a bit more time. But now it is so overly blown that they don't even pay lip service to anything else. It's bullshit. And the reaction from a lot of rock friends is, well, fuck it. It's the Grammys. It doesn't matter. It fucking matters a lot. and you have a place at that table. That's your table. That's your seat at the table. Why would you give it up? Fight for your place at the table. They're taking it away from you unfairly. Fight for it. You know, people mention, well, pop gets all this and pop gets all, and I'm not, I got nothing against pop artists. I got nothing against pop music. There's great, great stuff being made there now. But when the playing field is not level in places where it should be, then you got a legitimate beef there and should do something about it. Sorry to rant about that.
No, it's good. Let me make a point on my show just real quick. The fact that I do not hate Judas Priest. I do appreciate Judas Priest and what all they've done for metal. Yeah. But I did want to get that out there before I moved on, before I got more hate mail. But, it's funny, you're talking about...
I heard him. He said, Judas Priest sucks. He said, Rob Halbert's an idiot. Right. He's an asshole. I heard it. I heard him right on there. Here.
But, it's funny, you're talking about all the different, and I think that most metalheads I know like more than just metal. Like even the most diehard Black Sabbath patch wearing, vest wearing dude likes, Bruno Mars or something, like something,
there's a great example of a guy who's inhumanly talented,
Yeah, it's pretty nuts. And even like when somebody asked me, like, what are your 5 favorite concerts you ever saw? And Bruno Mars, Garth Brooks, there's so many concerts that are some of my favorite ones I've ever seen that aren't, Metallica and Megadeth, which are great too.
Yeah. And it's that sort of goes hand in hand with something I often like to say about some of these phenomenal classic artists who have announced farewell tours, or even if they have not, are certainly closer to the end of their touring careers than the beginning. The Rolling Stones, Elton John, The Who, Paul McCartney, up until he had to pull the plug on things, Ozzy Osbourne. Even to friends who say, oh, the Beatles, that was my mom and dad's band or my grandparents' band. I'm like, listen. There's a reason Paul McCartney fills arenas and stadiums 55 years later. It's because he's one of the greatest fucking musicians ever to live. You're a fool not to go see him. Just go see him. I remember all my punker friends and all my metal friends when I was a kid loathed the Grateful Dead, hated the Grateful Dead. I loved the Grateful Dead and would go see the Grateful Dead every opportunity I had, including the first time they came into my tiny little hometown of Englishtown, New Jersey, Labor Day weekend in '77, and 150,000 Deadheads showed up to my little hometown, which had 2 traffic lights, and it shut down all of New Jersey. It was and considered one of the best performances the band ever did. But I would tell all of my friends who hated the Dead, I'm like, listen, I understand that musically this is not your thing. But just as a societal, just from the societal aspect, from going to see a piece of Americana, go see the Grateful Dead, because one day they're not going to be around, and you will be really glad that you at least went and experienced what they were all about once in your life. And some of my friends took me up on that, and every single one of them was glad for it. Most of the time it didn't stop them from hating the Grateful Dead's music anymore. But they at least had a better understanding of what was going on and the sort of miniature society that grew up around them. And, that's why I tell people, go see anybody and everybody you can, but certainly these greats who are, maybe on their last lap around the tour circuit, go see them. I go see Paul McCartney every chance I get. I go see Elton John every chance I get, especially when he's got Ray Cooper on percussion. There are just some phenomenal musicians who are in their 70s now. You got to see them while you can. And the Stones are still fucking brilliant. I caught them in D.C. last year and in Twickenham, the national rugby stadium on the outskirts of London the year before, which to date is still their last UK show. Do they look old? Of course they look old. They're in the fucking mid-70s. But Mick Jagger hits that stage, and the guy does not stop moving for 2 hours. He is still Mick Jagger. He is still in incredible shape. Is he crazy looking Mick. Well, yeah, but he was always crazy looking Mick, you know? Yeah, I just can't stress enough that if you get a chance to see these artists, then you really need to go and take advantage.
Absolutely. One, just a question about your radio career and things like that, and just your thoughts on everything. But, starting college radio in the 80s all the way up to what you're doing now with syndication and with Sirius XM and things like that, the evolution of what you've seen over the years, how do you feel about, people having podcasts and YouTube shows and like I said, Sirius XM and syndication, things like that. Just everybody, anybody that basically wants to have a radio show can have a radio show as long as they have an internet connection at this point. How do you feel about all that?
Well, it certainly made it more democratic, and it's going to be like anything else. The cream will rise to the top. It's like bands. It's like movies. Good stuff will usually get to stick around, not always. I mean, I think we all know great movies we've seen that died at the box office, or great bands that, maybe didn't reach the full potential that their fans wanted and that their talent probably deserved. But again, it's given everybody a shot to go in and do things. So I think from that side of the coin, I think that's pretty cool. I started out talking on a CB radio in a shack out behind my parents, and I would key the microphone in and play music and do DJ praise.
Nice.
I was like 10, 11 years old. But that was the technology. I mean, if I was that same kid now, I probably absolutely would have a podcast, but I think I'd still try and get on the radio.
Mm-hmm.
Only because, I grew up listening to great radio out of both Philadelphia and New York. Where I grew up in Jersey was an hour to each city. And even though the town I was in was mostly geared towards the New York market. Sorry, my Star Trek communicator thing is blowing up. Everyone's contacting me about this thing I'm doing tonight. Anyway, yeah. Opportunities are there for everybody to do things. So, even if you didn't grow up in a fabulous radio market like Central Jersey, like me, and inspired by that, if you have ideas you want to communicate, then by God, go out, seize the fucking bull by the horns and give it a ride.
Very good advice there, man. So we'll end this with Corey Taylor does the forward in the book. What is your relationship with Corey, and how did you approach him to do the forward?
Corey and I first met on the first Slipknot tour. I had gotten a hold, thanks to a friend who worked for many years at Roadrunner, Mark Abramson, aka Psycho. He had sent me it was unmastered of the first Slipknot record. And I thought it was like one of the most exciting things I ever heard in my life. And he said, well, the song Wait and Bleed is probably going to be the single. So I started playing it on the syndicated show. And that was the first real airplay that the band got. And unbeknownst to me, most of the guys in the band had been listening to me via my radio affiliate Laser in Des Moines since the start of the show. And the show now 24 years, something like that. It's been a while. But anyway, Corey would listen to the show late night on Sunday, and always said, "Oh, one day I'm going to be on that show. I'm going to get interviewed on that show, and have a band and all this stuff." And he told me this on our first meeting, which was in Hartford, Connecticut. They were playing Ozfest. They were the first band. There were like 30 bands that year, and they were the lowest on the totem. And they had the best set of the entire day. And I was already predisposed to like the live show because I'd been playing them for a little while by then. And when I got on the bus, and they had the oldest, smelliest, shittiest bus you had ever seen. And there are 9 band members and all the crew and all the management. They were just living like animals. But it was the most rock and roll and fun bus I had ever been on. And the guys gave me a really nice welcome. And Corey was under doctor's orders to to rest his voice, so he didn't do the interview. I think it was Joey and Clown did that first interview I did with the band, but I hung out with Corey the rest of the day, and he talked as much as he could. I did most of the talking, which is what he refers to in the forward. I just started yakking and telling stories. Many of the stories ended up in the book, and he was one of the folks who was sort of on me through the years, like, you got to do the book. You're going to do a great job at the book. Write the book. And one day I said, well, okay, great. I'll write the fucking book. You're going to have to write the forward. He goes, I'll write the fucking forward. Fuck you. I can write a fucking forward. You write the fucking book. You write the fucking book. It just became this sort of back and forth. And it was close to a year and a half ago that he came to me and said, hey, I got the forward ready to go. It's all in my head. Where's the book? And I was like, well, I've got so many more stories I want to add to it, and it should be longer, and I don't know what else to do. And he looks at me like I'm the dumbest guy on the planet, and he said, you just write another fucking book after the first one, you fucking idiot. And I hadn't thought of that. And I'm like, oh, yeah. But this is a guy with with multiple books out. So to him, that's not such a big deal. For me, it's a much bigger deal. And it was right around that time I got signed for the book, and kind of locked myself up for a few weeks and finished it up. A good chunk was written by then. And then, of course, the last year has been all the back and forth with the editors and, do this, don't do that, take this out, try more of this, add another story like that. And, it finally came together. And, I was going to put some photographs in there. Anybody who sort of follows what I do knows I do a lot of photography, and I certainly get access to a lot of interesting stuff. But we didn't have enough photos to consistently have something for every chapter. And that really bothered me. Like, it really, really, really bothered me. And then I thought, well, shit, I'll just call Alan McBain, who does my artwork for a billion other projects. And I told him about the book, and he said, well, send me whatever you got written. Let me go through it and see what I can come up with. And he sent me a series of pencil sketches based on what was in the stories. And I was like, fuck, this is perfect. Go for it. And we didn't even know if the publisher was going to go for it or not. I said, fuck it. I'll pay for it myself if I have to. Just start working on these, start working on them so we can hit a deadline. And it all worked out. So, I'm happy to have those in the book. And I'm just excited for the thing finally to hit, even if it is hitting at, the weirdest time to ever release a book in 100 years, And I do want to remind folks they can order or pre-order through Rare Bird Books, my publisher, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, bookshop.org. The best thing you can do, depending on what situations are around you at this moment, is to order from a local bookstore. And I've been trying to stress this with everybody I've spoken to. We do not want bookstores going the way of the record stores, i.e. there ain't no fucking record stores anymore, or very few. So if you do have a local bookstore that you can support, they can order it for you. If they don't have it in stock, they can get it for you. They can order it like anybody else. So try and support your local bookstores. But failing that, if it's just, if you live out in the middle of nowhere and Amazon is the way to go, then, hit Amazon or Barnes & Noble or wherever else you would normally purchase books. And the same day the book is out, April 14th, there is an audiobook version coming out, and I've narrated that myself. It comes in, I think, at about 7.5 hours for me to read everything. And I get rather dramatic in it, and throw in some extra, do some of the dialects and voices that sort of come across in the stories. So hopefully it's a good read. The engineers who worked on it with me at Do Art Media in Manhattan, they're in Midtown, and they do all sorts of film stuff. They have a whole floor just for audiobooks, and I had a blast with those guys, and they were laughing pretty hard as I was doing the read. So I suppose that was a sign. And after each day, it took a few days to do. They're like, "That's fucking insane! Did this all really happen?" I'm like, "Yeah, every word of it." So I suppose that was a good sign. But I'll be glad when people get it in their hands and start checking it out. And I hope they enjoy it on its own merits. And if they need a break from the election and the politics and the other news these days. I hope the book provides that. That's what it's there for. It's just to give you some fun rock and roll shit to read. That's all it is.
Well, absolutely, man. Well, what's the best way for people to keep up with you online?
Very simple to do. First of all, I have a website, loubrutus.com, and you can go there. You can check out my photography. You can check out news. You can link through to all the social net shit. The Facebook page is Lou Brutus Rocks. Also at Lou Brutus on Twitter and Instagram. There's some copycat stuff, so just look for the little blue check marks on each one. That'll tell you it's the verified actual page. I mean, some days I don't even want to be me. I don't know why the fuck anybody else would want to be me. I just don't understand. But yeah, it's all there, and I'm really active on that stuff. I post a lot of photos backstage, on stage. I post baseball pictures. I've been an MLB on-field photographer for, I think, 10 years now. I don't know if I'm going to work this season or not, depending on what's going on, but hopefully I'll at least make some games. And, I'm easy enough to find. You can also check out more about the show at Hard Drive Radio for all the social nets, or harddriveradio.com. Again, there's the 2-hour weekend edition of the show, and we're doing that 23, 24, something like that years. And the weeknight version, Hard Drive XL, 5 hours a night, 5 nights a week. That is 10 or 12 years now. I forget. I work 7 days a week. I don't rest. I just drink black coffee and listen to music and try and stay busy and out of trouble. But I really appreciate you having me on to blabber about the book and all this music stuff. I mean, I think Pete Townsend said it best. I hope I get the quote right, but rock and roll is simultaneously one of the most important and one of the fucking stupidest things on the planet. I don't know if rock can change the world. I think music can change the world. I think, when you can mass communicate ideas via music, it can change things for the better or for the worse. It can change things, certainly. But certainly I think when the chips are down, especially music can find ways of bringing you back up again. And that's just one of the many, 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 many reasons I love music and love being around it. And have been glad to be a very small cog in the giant rock and roll machine.
All right, man. Well, enjoy the rest of your evening. Have a good time on the Facebook Live, and it's great to finally get you on the show. And let's definitely keep in touch. And
absolutely, please plug the shit out of my book. Don't stop plugging my book.
I will absolutely.
And yeah,
do that.
and by the way, book tour got postponed. Once the coast is clear, I will be hitting the road all over the country. Hopefully that was the plan originally. We had dates all over the country. Hopefully I'll get to do those. And hopefully it'll all work out in the end. But I hope to see everybody in person soon. And thank you again. Very kind of you to hook me up.
Satan, I'm certain of the side of Satan. What do you want from me? They never told me the better I was meant to be. Yeah, overdo it, don't tell me you feel it. Stop your vision and fight your way through it. I'm not like you.